Hey everybody, I'm Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour, and can we agree that this little sucker, as useful as it is also obnoxious in that it is constantly telling us what to do. Every time this thing hums or chirps or vibrates, it's bossing me around with something that I need to be worried about next, some video game that I need to be playing, keeping up with the other people who are playing, building my village, whatever it might be. This is always telling me what to do. And what's funny is that I think there is this prevailing attitude, and maybe at times I have it too, that this device is our friend because it isn't really telling us what to do. But this device, that being the Bible, is pretty obnoxious because it always wants to be in our business and tell us what to do. But if I'm to be totally honest with myself, the number of interactions I have with this device where it is telling me what to do is a much higher percentage than the number of interactions I have with this device, that being the Bible, in which it tells me what to do. The Bible hardly ever tells you what to do. There's almost nothing in here as a statistical percentage that has the God character coming out and being like, hey, all people for all time, never do this or always do that. Now, your brain's probably running right to a few examples, and you're probably right. There's some of that. It's in there. But it's a teeny tiny percentage. I mean, just look at the makeup of the Bible. There's tons of narrative. I mean, what, half-ish, maybe a little bit more is just storytelling. There's a whole bunch of poetry and prose and philosophy and wisdom literature. There is a whole bunch of prophecy, not like just predicting the future, that's in there a little bit, but prophecy like God communicating a specific set of instructions or warnings or corrections or blessings to a specific set of people in a specific time. And there's some more narrative in the New Testament. There's some letters. There's some apocalyptic literature about crazy hard to discern stuff that comes later. And mixed in between is some very practical stuff that's do-ish and don't-ish, but not much. Why does this matter at all? Well, if you dig into it yourself and you see that what I'm saying smacks of truth, that most of the Bible isn't telling you what to do, it matters a ton because that has implications for the nature of the relationship between people and God. It tells us something about how God views us as people and what role we play in this whole story that goes way beyond the Bible. Think about it like this. Imagine your first job. Mine was at Burger King. I remember what happened in my first job. Maybe your job was something like this. They gave me an employee handbook, and I had to pass a test on it before I could get started. And it was just a lot of things to do and not do. And it was very clear to me after I met with my manager, and he was like, this is everything you're ever going to encounter. Just do the things in here and don't get it wrong. Anything that's beyond this that you don't know what to do, just defer to a manager. Oh, okay. So don't think. Yeah. Don't think, just do. And then I started repeating that phrase for like the next 5 years of my life because it stuck with me so much. But then I can picture other jobs I got into where the person in charge is like, all right, here's the handbook. It's tiny. It's just really a set of value statements. Here's who we are. Here's what we're going for. Here's what we'd like to accomplish. We're bringing you on because we think you might be able to help and maybe you'd have some energy to throw at this thing. And, we figure you're probably going to screw some stuff up because everybody does when they get into this line of work. So, hey, swing big. There's a lot of forgiveness. There's a long leash here. Everybody's growing on the job. But what we want is for you to take ownership of this thing and look for creative, proactive ways to help build it. That's incredibly liberating. Whereas the Burger King job, I mean, clearly I'm just a cog. You gave me rules, ones and zeros. I'm not to think, I'm just to do. I'm a cog. The other thing, though, is liberating not in the way of like, oh, now I can do whatever I want. Ha ha, I'm going to take advantage of all of you people and still cash the checks. No, it's like, hey, I have some ownership here and I have a vestedness in making this thing better, in doing my part. And well, even if I do mess up, dang it, I'm going to try. Likewise, when we think about the text, if what God had written down was an enormous manual, much bigger than this, more like the volume of all the books back there on my shelves, of what to do or not do in every single situation anybody could ever find themselves in, well, then you're a cog. That says something about how God views you and where you fit into the whole thing. Like you're not important. You are something serving a bigger thing, and you are not to think or take ownership of this. You are just to fit between the other gears and do what you do. Whereas if he writes it the way he did, with lots of principles and values and implications and ideas, but not a lot of overt do this, don't do this language, well, that means you're vested. Now, Jesus uses exactly this kind of language to describe the vestedness level that he wants from people who sign up to follow him in the book of Matthew. The language there intones that Jesus views the right kind of follower as a son, a daughter, an heir, an agent, an ambassador of him, the king, and his kingdom. And it's interesting because he doesn't really spend a lot of time being like, and if you're my ambassador, don't embarrass me by doing this or not doing that. Overwhelmingly, he's explaining values. In fact, he opens his Sermon on the Mount with a statement of values. Blessed are the meek. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. He goes on, instead of just saying, don't kill people. Well, obviously, don't kill people. Come on. But instead, he expands that all the way back toward don't hate people. And you'd be like, wow, that's pretty good. That's a better don't. That's a more all-encompassing don't. But then he swings it even further past that, all the way to be so transformed by the values of the king and the values of the kingdom that you not only don't kill people, that you not only don't hate people, but that you love everybody, not just the people who are nice to you, but even your enemies. Do you see the way Jesus took it from a rule to a proactive, empowering principle that implicitly is him saying to the potential follower, like, I want you in, I want your heart, I want you vested in this thing, I want you to take ownership of this thing. That is why this interpretive principle is so dang important. Because if you embrace the Burger King job cog mentality of how to read the Bible, like I did for so long, where you come at it and you're like, okay, well, God used a bunch of stories and stuff, and that's nice, but surely there are rules in here, and I'm going to dig them out of every verse of song in here, of every proverb, of every story. They're in there. It just needed me to find out exactly where, and then to make sure you know about them and that I'm watching. Gross! It's a nightmare way to read the text. The religion that's born out of that is a nightmare and is antithetical to the values of the God described in this document. But by contrast, if you read this thing as what it is, a story of God as the main character, interacting with a whole bunch of different humans who come and go, that's part of the implicit message of the thing, in a whole bunch of different situations, and you get to know what this God values and what he prioritizes and what he's up to and what his redemptive scheme looks like, then, that coupled with a few places where it overtly says do this or don't do that, you get to the end and you're like, well, when I encounter situations, I guess what I do is I think about, what would God do? What is God like? What is he into? What does he value the most? And you add it up, and even if there's no smoking gun verse in terms of what you ought to do, you take a swing at it in light of the character of God. And if you do screw it up, the Bible even has a mechanism for that in the grace of Jesus to forgive you for swinging big and messing up. But overwhelmingly, that's going to point you toward getting it right. In the same way, intuitively, you are all experts at watching a well-done movie or reading a well-written book. And as you go along, you're not like, there's a rule in here. Where's the rule? Where's the rule? I'm going to find it and I'm going to tell other people about it. No, you watch it and you're like, oh, that character does this beautiful thing. That character does that stupid stuff. Look at this theme of love or beauty or whatever it might be. I want to have that theme affect me. I want to be like the characters who are getting it right. You understand there are implications that you draw out, and that is truth. Just being talked to like an idiot and being told everything is this way or that, do this thing or don't do that thing, I mean, that's not how most truth is conveyed. No, a good communicator might give you stuff like that from time to time. God might give you stuff like that from time to time. But overwhelmingly, because of how God views people, he seems to communicate himself through who he is and what he does and what he's up to first and foremost. And rules are a distant 50th down the line in terms of how he communicates and empowers the people who follow him to do the stuff that they do. Real simply put, when you pick up the text, you may, if you are like me, have the temptation to try to find simple do's and don'ts that you can extrapolate out and apply to all people for all time forever. That can feel very comforting. It doesn't seem to be what the text is actually doing or what God is actually doing. And as difficult as it may be, The better read, I'm convinced, and convinced by people much smarter than me, is to instead view God as the main character, to understand who God is and what he's up to, and then and only then to consider, where do I fit? In those places where God overtly says, do this stuff or don't do this stuff, clearly the text intends that you would do this stuff or not do this stuff. But beyond that, we get to lean into the vestedness that is implicitly communicated by the very ratio of the structure of the Bible between stuff that isn't telling us what to do and stuff that is. That communicates truth about God and us, and also frames up the Bible in a way that we can interpret it more accurately. Hopefully that's useful. I know this principle was a world changer for me and actually my faith in God in general. Thanks for kicking it around with me. I'm Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour. Let's do it again soon.